part of the way all of these terrible things take hold is that we think we're alone. And so one of the ways I stay grounded is by connecting with folks, by doing this work, by being in community with people. Organizing is nothing more than asking, how can I help? And finding a few people to help you answer that question.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to How to Not Lose Your Shit, a podcast where we figure out how to make a difference in the middle of chaos without losing our shit. I'm LaFonda Cousin, a part-time yoga instructor and self-care advocate, and of course, the Chief People Officer here at Red Wine and Blue.
And I'm Katie Paris, the founder of Red Wine and Blue. Before we can really talk about how not to lose our shit, we got to be real. What is making you lose your shit this week?
The partisanship of the last week, the government shutdown, having friends that are impacted by the government shutdown, and just like the chaos around the government shutdown.
Yeah.
The White House answering machine is saying it's the fault of the Democrats, and it just all feels so childish. And to me, we had this conversation when I started, and me feeling not political because social things shouldn't be political. And I feel like people should be entitled to quality and affordable healthcare. And so that because that is the center of the shutdown just feels really silly and chaotic to me. It feels like toddlers are running the daycare, and that's kind of making me lose my shit a little bit.
I mean, this is why people don't like politics, because when they hear the word politics, they think partisanship, they think finger pointing, they think just playing games. And this is not a game.
Yeah. Real people are impacted.
Yeah, it does feel really scary in this moment. I think to have a shutdown in the middle of the chaos of all the wreckage right now of Trump and Russell Vogt, who the hell knew that we'd have to know who our budget director was at the White House because he'd be pushing such a political, ideological agenda. But really to take apart the government because he sees federal workers as the enemy, like public servants, it's wild. And it's disheartening, I think, for us, especially because like, not only do we know people who are impacted, we see how many more people will be impacted, but we work hard every day to get women to engage in politics as it should be. And this is not how politics should be.
What about you?
I have something else that has been making me lose my shit. You and I had a Zoom call last week, and you were wearing this really cute Spelman sweatshirt.
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, it's so annoying. People think I'm a student there, but it says Spelman mom.
I was approached one time by someone who was like, oh my God, when you graduate from Spelman? I was like, I didn't. It says mom right here at the bottom, friends.
Okay. Nobody has mistaken me anytime lately. I don't know, maybe not even in the last decade or so, as someone who could possibly be in college. So I'm losing my shit over the fact that LaFonda Cousin, the co-host of this podcast, seems to feel like that is an issue for her, that her skincare routine is so good that people think she's in college.
I knew this was going to come up this week. I knew it.
I will say it did lead to some good skincare tips. I was like, okay, LaFonda, just stop. We do need to talk.
So we are trying something a little new this week. We are going to try our self-care tip of the week. So my self-care tip of the week, I guess, is to make sure you're moisturizing the entire face, all the way down to the neck and the chest. And then I also rub my moisturizer and my serums into the hands because I think most people don't do that. So when you're moisturizing, you do all of your skincare steps and then you moisturize the hands as well. Taking the time to do my skincare in the morning and at night, I use that time to like speak kindness to myself if I am losing my shit, or just to be, in my own personal space. So that little 7-10 minutes to do the steps that it takes to do my skincare is just, it kind of gets me grounded in the morning, I think, because we talked before about how I just get up, I drink water, I don't take in the news, I don't do any of those things. I just kind of get myself mentally prepared for the day. But at the end of the day, it gives me a chance to sort of wash off the day. I know that sort of feels kind of like I don't know, silly maybe, but it gives me a chance to sort of wash off the day. And I don't do it in a rush. Like normally I would just like, I just got to wash my face because it's just the thing I got to do before I go to bed. But I really have started to take my time with it and like speak kindness to myself and really take the time to do the steps to just be in the moment with myself. It's helped, I think, a little bit.
I've been doing it. I'm trying to like have the routine. I'm trying to by in no way do I think that, what is it called, this in the serums, the hydrolonic,
Hyaluronic acid.
I can never get that word right. And I realized that it's not that something like this can really save me from losing my shit, like the actual serum or what's in it. But I have been enjoying just taking a moment of focus and attention.
Mm-hmm.
The more we can focus on, I think, loving ourselves, loving our neighbors, right? And putting that focus and our time and attention on that rather than on all of the nightmares that are, coming out of this administration day to day, I think it helps. So Andrea Gibson is a poet. They were the poet laureate of Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reminded of this quote this week that I really love, and so I'm going to share it. It was, "In any moment, on any given day, I can measure my wellness by this question. Is my attention on loving, or is my attention on who isn't loving me?"
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is relevant for things just like very small and also very big. We're going to talk about the conversation we got to have with Stacey Abrams this week a little bit later, but I saw a lot of echoes of that in what she was saying too.
Yeah.
She was saying, that we win when we stop fighting their fights and start fighting our own. To me, that's the same thing. Am I going to focus on who's not loving me, or am I going to focus on who I love? I think ultimately too, it's like a real gift of the work we get to do that we see there are so many opportunities to turn our attention to our community. I just want to share one example. Kelly, who is our state director in Michigan, she was at a meeting for End Gun Violence Michigan. And during the meeting, she was approached by two different people who told their stories about the impact that Red, Wine, and Blue Michigan was having on people in their lives. And one came up to her and told her that her child decided to transition at age 25 and that she wanted to support her child but wasn't sure how. She felt lost as a mother because she didn't have the answers, like so many moms. And so she did an internet search, stumbled upon one of our national events,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just the right message for her at the right time. And she's now connected with support groups in Michigan and said that Red, White, and Blue was there when she needed it most. And she's so grateful. I mean, you just don't know the impact of this work, maybe in the day-to-day hard work of pulling all these things together. But then when we see stories like this, which we're lucky to see a lot, it just reminds me of the power of doing politics as it should be, building relationships, the foundation of community. And that gets back to Stacey Abrams too, because boy, did she reinforce that we have to build the foundation of that house for action, and everything else is built on relationships and building that firm foundation. And like from there, that's how we win elections, we protect voting rights, et cetera. But man, does that smart lady understand the importance of that firm foundation.
Yeah, we've talked about it. I mean, we talked about it last week too, that everyone plays a part. And I think she really hit home with that. She talked about everyone playing their part in the bigger picture. And I think I see that as, our members and our state teams and everyone, our Trouble Nation groups, like every single person, every single team, every single role has a part to play in this bigger picture on how we move forward. And sometimes it gets really difficult to see that. And then you hear stories like that, you see wins like that, and you realize that just even those small things, inviting someone back over and over and over again, being annoying, as Stacey gave us permission to do, telling someone to keep coming, telling someone to vote every single morning. I think she said, get up and, telling someone to register, telling someone to vote every single morning. you get that bigger picture view and you realize that we all have that little part to play. And once you step back and take a look at it, you're seeing the impact of the work. And I think that's what makes us special. What makes, relational organizing special. It's what makes Red, Wine, and Blue special. And when you see those moments come to fruition, you realize the power of community.
There is not one single cinematic solution. It's all of us waking up every day and doing one right thing.
One thing. Yep.
Okay, I have to say, before we introduce this Stacey interview, I can't remember if I shared with you, LaFonda, but I've been having a little bit of trouble sleeping lately. I think a combination of chaos in the world, all the things with raising the young kids and keeping it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And the night that we had Stacey come and speak with us, I slept through the night for the first time in weeks.
Oh, yay.
And honestly, it's had a residual effect too.
You've been sleeping more since?
Yeah, it's like it's kept me more focused. And so there are so many resources out there that we have in other women, in each other.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll have our conversation with the one and only Stacey Abrams. Did you know that Red, Wine, and Blue has a banned book club? We meet online one Wednesday a month to talk about a banned book. This month, we're reading The Girl Who Fell from the Sky, a book about a biracial girl named Rachel who is the sole survivor of a family tragedy and then goes to live with her grandmother. The author, Heidi Duro, won the Bellwether Prize for Best Fiction, addressing issues of racism and classism. Parents in a Utah school district tried to have her book banned in 2022, so let's talk about it. Join us on Wednesday, October 15th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. You can RSVP at redwine.blue or by clicking the link in the show notes. Hi, everybody. It is so good to see you tonight. Isn't it amazing that in the midst of this total shit show, we can all still come together with such enthusiasm and connection, and the feeling I get every time that I see you all say hello in the chat? I hope you feel it too. Y'all, we are just a little over 1 month away from the 2025 elections taking place on November 4th. There are 53,000 open seats on the ballot coming up. And I know that we are all having huge moments of feeling overwhelmed. At the same time, I'm feeling energized to fight like hell. It probably has something to do with our guest coming on tonight. These 2025 elections, whether statewide elections in Virginia and New Jersey or local school board races like in my state of Ohio and Pennsylvania and so many other places, they are all opportunities to push back against the chaos that is happening at the federal level, for many of us at the state level, and to show our power. And to be clear, that we as a country do not support what is coming out of DC. The fact that we have thousands of you on this call tonight, that is power. And don't forget it. So without further ado, are you ready for Stacey Abrams? Welcome to Red, Wine, and Blue and this amazing crew of badass women who are ready for you tonight.
It is a delight to be here. Thank you for having me.
Part of what we all admire about you so much is that you're not only a political leader, you're an author, you are an entrepreneur, you are an advocate. And I just want to start the conversation by asking, wearing all those hats, in the middle of a government shutdown, in the middle of a decline of our democracy, how are you doing? How are you staying grounded? How are you taking care of yourself? Let's just start there.
First of all, Katie, thank you for inviting me to the space. And I would say that it's spaces like this that are not just a place of community, they're a place of renewal. And I hope everyone thinks about it that way, that if I'm the daughter of two pastors, and in the church, you're taught, if two or more are gathered, there I am also. Where we are in community together because part of the way all of these terrible things take hold is that we think we're alone. We think we're the only ones, or we think what we're feeling isn't valid. And so one of the ways I stay grounded is by connecting with folks, by doing this work, by being in community with people. I also watch an inordinate amount of television. It makes me very happy. And I do not believe in the idea of guilty pleasure. If I'm happy, I feel no guilt about it. Because It's
That's
critical.
brilliant.
There's a frame that President Eisenhower used. He said there are things that are important and urgent, things that are important but not urgent, things that are urgent but not important, and things that are neither urgent nor important. We spend a lot of our time in the urgent, not important space. Things somebody else forgot to do and they're blaming us, things we meant to do but we didn't get around to it, that feel like we have to do it right now, but nobody's going to remember in a week that it was happening. We try our best to get to the things that are important but not urgent, but we feel guilty spending our time there because, well, it doesn't have to happen now. The work we're doing around democracy, around elections, around our communities, that is important and urgent. But we neglect that last box, that not important, not urgent box at our peril, because that's where you get rejuvenated. That's where you take rest. That's where creativity comes in. I can write books because I spend a lot of time letting myself just think about how can I be a better troublemaker, which is what I do for a living. And it's in that space when I'm not worried, when I'm letting myself read a great book, when I'm letting myself just listen to the sound of like breathing. Those are the places where we get the capacity to move past the urgent but not important and ignore the email that we really don't have to answer, to get to the important but not urgent, the thing we need to do. And now that we've got some brain space, we can figure out how to set up red, wine, and blue and save America. And then we get to the important and urgent work of actually doing it. But if we don't do all four boxes, we're going to get trapped usually in the urgent but not important box. That's where they want us. They want us spinning our wheels. And I want us to visit not important, not urgent, because that makes it easier for us to get past the urgent and not important to the real work ahead.
I had never heard you share that before. It is so brilliant. You know, so much of us, we actually just launched a new podcast this week at Red, Wine, and Blue called How to Not Lose Your Shit. And the whole point is actually to talk about, we also desperately want to be making a difference and everything does feel so important and urgent. But if we're not finding those places to recharge, and there's almost this dynamic set up as like, oh, if I am taking care of myself and recharging, then I need to protect myself totally from politics, or that's not okay to be doing that. I'm not a serious enough person. And if we're over here doing politics too, though, that then like somehow that's bad for us. And I just love this idea of the four quadrants. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
I also just appreciate the permission that like, I don't need to feel guilty that I totally binged a new cooking show, Next Gen Chef. Very good. Highly recommend.
Okay, what in the world was, they told her what to do and she refused to change the recipe. I'm on episode 5.
Okay. Call me when you're done. We'll process the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Moving on to maybe a little bit of a different quadrant, but maybe we'll come back to that one a little bit later. Okay. All right. So I am obsessed with your 10 steps campaign because you don't just like talk about it. You show us, you're direct, you're clear, you give us actual concrete guidance. And so you have created this 10 steps campaign. You have the 10 steps to autocracy and authoritarianism so that we all can understand what's going on. We can spot it. I actually want to spend most of our conversation tonight, though, on the 10 steps to freedom and power.
Absolutely.
Because we have had quite a few authoritarian experts come on here, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, Erica Chenoweth. And I think that what we all know is that there's not like another step we're waiting on, you know, like to know that there's a 5-alarm fire here. But I think that what people really are wanting to know right now is what we can do about it. But I don't want to sacrifice this moment with you, though, to get your gut check on just like looking at those 10 steps towards authoritarianism. Where are we right now?
I mean, we've hit all 10 steps, and it's important for us to acknowledge that, but to know that the reason for the guidepost, the reason for the map is not to say that we've climbed the mountain and now we're stuck here. It's to know these are the different ways they're going to attack us. If we do have anchors, it's step 1 when they win the election and they start to rip apart our country, and step 10 when they make certain we can never take it back by denying access to democracy in full. Those are the 2 pillars, but they mix and match in the middle. And the problem is we've seen them do all 10 of the things. But the goal for the 10 is to keep us so mired in the fear that we forget the opportunity. And so I'm going to use this past week, you know, if they did the movie Patton on Saturday Night Live, what we saw happen with Pete Hegseth and the rest of the, you know, I know that this is being taped, so I'm trying not to go to see Caught on Thursday, but you know, that spectacle, that absurdity that we watched happen with the convening of the generals, with the intentional turning up of this idea that we are going to be under military junta in some near future. It was done intentionally. They did it to convince us that that room full of generals were just waiting to turn their fire on the people. And it failed spectacularly. And so what we needed to understand is that that was absolutely an attempt at step 9. Step 9, when you try to normalize violence, you try to militarize, when you scare people into obeisance. That's what they were attempting to do. But what we saw happen was that, unfortunately for them, we have a diverse nation that includes people who are now in the position of protecting us. We can't ignore the signs, but by knowing what the signs are, we can start to decipher what they actually mean. And part of our responsibility in this moment is not to think, oh, we've done 10 steps and we're dead. It's we've done 10 steps. How far did they get? They've shut down the government. Step 4. They've been trying to break democracy by shutting down the government. Russell Votes promised to fire more people. Yeah, he was going to do it whether the government shut down or not. They're just trying to link them together. But the thing to hold to is that because we know it now, because we know why they're doing it, the power to shock us should be diminished. The power to paralyze us should be diminished. It's not about not knowing or knowing. It's about understanding and recognizing, so we figure out how do we make our way through it. And that's why the 10 steps are so important and why it's so critical that you've had those leaders on this call explaining it. But my worry is that we are so overwhelmed by the explanation, we've forgotten that we can do something about it.
So let's get to what we can do about it.
Okay, so step 1 is commit, and you all have already done that. And the thing is, that's a threshold step. That is just as important as step 1 to authoritarianism and autocracy. When people commit to understanding what's going on, they shed the veil of ignorance, but they also break through one of the strongest powers of an autocrat, which is to keep you away from knowledge, away from a sense of possibility. So commit. Second is share. We too often get information and we think we're not important enough to tell someone. We think, well, maybe we don't know enough and we can't put it out there. They rely on our silence. And so sharing what we know, breaking through, taking good information, not misinformation, but taking good information and proliferating it breaks through the propaganda, because part of the authoritarian regime is let's lie about everything. So we've got to keep telling the truth. And again, it can feel small, but truth telling is vital. It is how people hold on to their sense of self. Step 3, which is the organized step. And it is one of my favorite steps too, because that's the place where we realize that we are bigger than we know and we are more empowered than we realize. And when we do this work, when we take the time to bring people into community with us, irrespective of how they feel about politics, I like to tell folks, you may not be into politics, but politics is into you and it is a stalker. And so part of it is. So part of our responsibility is not to organize because we're trying to create a new entity. It's to organize so we create protection for ourselves, renewal for ourselves, opportunity for ourselves. And then you mobilize, you start to do the work. We are watching the shutdown of our government, but we're talking about real people who are going to be out of work and out of paychecks in about 2 weeks. They're going to still have to make their bills. They're going to still have to feed their kids. We can mobilize, and not just to do the big things, but to make sure there are groceries on Friday, to make sure kids who don't necessarily have a way to make up a difference, that they know their neighbors are going to take care of them. So mobilizing isn't just about taking to the streets. It's about taking to each other's homes and each other's communities and saying, we're going to help you do something to solve problems. The next one is that we have to litigate, and not everyone has to be a lawyer, but there are organizations out there fighting using the rule of law. We've got to support those organizations, whether you're talking about Democracy Forward or the ACLU or the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. We've got to fight. We don't have to win every case, but we've got to fight every fight. People forget how often Thurgood Marshall lost before Brown v. Board of Education. We lose a lot, but the way we fight determines how we eventually win. So we've got to litigate, and that's important. And I wanted to leave it in there because some folks are like, well, not everyone can be a lawyer, but we can all support the rule of law. Step 6 is that we have to disrupt. This is one of my favorites. Disruption means that we simply refuse to let them tell us to be silent, to tell us to be still. It's protesting, but it's also doing those know your rights cards, handing them out at gas stations and grocery stores, anywhere you know someone may be. It's about holding our language. I talk about DEI all the time. The reason they have gone after DEI so aggressively is because it is our superpower. You can't destroy a pluralistic democracy unless you destroy pluralism. If you can't get rid of all the different people, you're not going to get what you want. And the United States is the most diverse democracy in the world. And so the reason they tried to scare us with the military display was to tell us, oh, you should be afraid of it. The problem they've got is our military is one of the most diverse examples of what America can be. And we should hold that. We should deny them the agency to tell us that women shouldn't be in school, that the disabled should be pushed back into the shadows, that the LGBTQI community isn't a part of our human story. We've got to use our language. We should use woke every Thursday. We should say DEI. We should say all of the things we're told not to say because we have to deny them the ability to construct a reality for us that is not the one we know. Step 8, we've got to engage. We've got to do the work of actually showing up, telling our legislators what they need to do, telling our city council members. But I want to take it a step further. It's not just saying you should have done this. It's maybe you don't know how to. Let me give you an example. Let me give you a resolution I've written. Let me tell you about a ballot initiative you need to carry. We can't wait for people to figure out how to do their job. Sometimes you got to do it for them. And I know I'm talking to a group of women and some good men who understand just how important it is to not wait for someone to figure it out. Sometimes you just got to show them what to do. And then we get to step 9. We got to elect people. And as you know, Katie, I began my work. I have always started from the local level because the people close, my friend Ayanna Pressley, people closest to the pain should be closest to the power. That's why local elections matter. That's why this work at the state and local level is so important, because it's also the place, it's the laboratory for the evil that they are wreaking across this country. They learn how to do it at the local level. They take over our school boards and take it to Congress. They thwart our justice system at the local level and they become federal judges and Supreme Court justices. They come after our communities at the local level and they practice their oppression and then they elevate it. So if they're going to start there, we're going to finish it there. And that's why local elections are going to be so critical, especially in this year, because that gets us to step 10. I use the phrase freedom and power because it's not about what we had. It's about what we deserve. And it's not about reclaiming the country that they've been breaking for the last 9 months. It's about building a country that's so strong in the next decade, they can't ever do it again. And so I don't want to restore what we had. I want to build what we should have had to begin with so that this couldn't have happened. And that means we've got to imagine, we've got to fight, and we have to demand every day that anyone who wants a seat at the table has to bring ideas and bring their commitment to making our democracy work for all of us. Those are our 10 steps.
That was incredible. Part of what you just said reminds me of something else I heard you say earlier this week. So I'm going to quote you to you. You said, "We win when we stop fighting their fights and start fighting our own. I could get pulled into the morass of their hatred or the beauty of our victory." And I think that's what you're talking about by renewal, building something totally different and better. Stacey, what does the beauty of our victory look like?
I'm a Black woman from the South. And if I were to believe the stories I was told, I never should have been able to have that trajectory. I certainly shouldn't be in this conversation. Our first responsibility is to believe that our humanity entitles us to freedom and justice. It entitles us to power. And we don't always believe that. That is why we sometimes sit silently by when we see wrong happen around us. It's not because we're bad people. It's because we've been convinced that our wishes, our dreams aren't strong enough to be reality. But my grandfather, my mother's father, was born 25 years after the end of slavery. He's much older than my grandmother. But in 2 generations, I'm sitting here. And so part of the beauty of our opportunity is that we have the ability to create the country we deserve, the communities we need. We should not have hungry children. We should not have veterans sleeping on the streets. We should not be worried about whether a disabled person is making a living wage. Those are solvable problems, but we've been convinced that the solutions are too complicated, but they're not. They are within our grasp. And so part of our responsibility is, instead of arguing with them about what we're entitled to, it's demanding what we want. And when we do that, every time we've decided it's what we want, we get it. The 19th Amendment wasn't an accident. It was a demand. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were demands. The Americans with Disabilities Act was a demand. We have to demand our full humanity, our full citizenship. And it's not that hard. It takes a long time. And the people who don't want us to have it are really, really committed to denying it. So I don't want to be too naive about it. But what I am is absolutely committed. And when we spend our time fighting about our language, fighting about our rights, fighting about whether we should be allowed, we are giving them the space to tell us who we are. I don't spend my time fighting with the other side. I don't. I invite everyone in. The way I say it is, look, you're welcome to the dinner, but you don't get to dictate what's on the menu. And so I want everyone to join me, but I'm not going to spend my time arguing about the legitimacy of my humanity, the vibrancy of my imagination, the righteousness of my desire for people to have what they need in a nation of so much. Those are things that should be givens, and they should have to argue with me about why I'm wrong.
Oh my gosh, thank you for being here. This is definitely going to make getting out of bed easier tomorrow morning. So you are perhaps you're most well known for a lot of things. One of the things that you're very well known for is as an organizer and the way you have turned around Georgia. Can we just dig in on some of that number 3 on organizing, and why in particular it matters so much to organize at the local level in our own communities? There is so much. I think sometimes people just feel like, is there anything I can do besides like get in the car and go to DC? So can you just speak to why local organizing in particular is so the highest best use perhaps of our time?
I'm going to give a couple of very quick examples. So when I was growing up in Mississippi, my parents, my mom was a librarian, my dad was a shipyard worker. They eventually became pastors, but they were very concerned always about the poverty and the paucity of resources in our communities. And so my mom decided, instead of waiting for the local government to realize that poor children, largely African-American children, and this was a predominantly white community we grew up in, but there was a housing development and it was mostly Black kids, they had a very high illiteracy rate. And so my mom, instead of, she would go to city council, but she also set up a vacation Bible school. And we use that as a proxy for helping teach kids to read. My mom organized this one community, in this one building, and that was organizing. It was, I saw a problem, I saw a solution. She didn't have to scale it to cover the country. She didn't have to scale it to cover the city. But there were 15 children who, because of what my mom did, for 2 weeks got better and had someone who cared about them and got to see someone who thought more of them. And when my mom became a pastor, she expanded it with her church. My dad, he did prison ministry. And my father is a man of faith and would go and visit these jails in Mississippi. And there was one in Gulfport where there wasn't a safe space to practice your faith. But he didn't want to create a church. He wanted to create a safe space for anyone who wanted to find redemption. And so my dad built the first, it was called a church, but it was ecumenical. And he organized a series of churches in the area, people who would never talk to my father out loud on purpose, but they heard him say, this is about giving people who have lost everything in terms of they've lost their freedom. We're going to give them a safe space. And my dad built a church inside of a prison. And the reason I use those two examples, my parents don't have resources. They didn't have money. My parents they've never had money. My mom called us the genteel poor. We watched PBS and read books, but no money. So you don't have to have resources to organize. You have to see a problem. You have to have a passion, and you have to believe that there's at least one other person who shares it with you. When I became minority leader in Georgia, it was after Democrats had lost every statewide office. The state Senate was within 3 of going Republican or supermajority. You were here, I think, during that time. And the House wasn't far away. And when I got the job, there was no thought in 2010 that we were one day going to be competitive as a state. And so I didn't start by saying, oh, we're going to win the next governor's election. I said, we're going to find 3 cities, 3 tiny towns, and we're going to go and see what we can do there. And so I had a group of young people and I sent them all around the state of Georgia, and they just had people have conversations about what worried you, what were you concerned about, what was hurting you. And we listened, and then we wrote it down and we came back. Organizing is about people knowing you can see them. It's about knowing that their concerns aren't their own, they are shared. In my work, everyone who's worked for me knows the question you have to ask always is, how can I help? Organizing is nothing more than asking, how can I help? And finding a few people to help you answer that question. We turn it into this big esoteric thing, this big mammoth responsibility, and it's not. But the reason it works is that if more of us are doing it, it's like those photo mosaic pictures when people first started getting cameras and taking all their little snaps, and they would do those images. So you'd have a big American flag, and you zoomed in, it was all these little people, their faces. That's what organizing is, because each of us doing something creates a quilt of so much that it becomes transformative. And from afar, it looks like you've done everything, but it wasn't one person doing it all. It was every single person who decided to organize, connecting. And that connective tissue is so incredibly strong, it is nearly impossible to rend it. And that is why organizing matters so much.
Can you just talk a little bit more about local elections? I'm curious your perspective on this. I think I generally talk about how, look, local protections from what's going on at the federal government, these come from our local governments. And so this happens in a very real, concrete way in terms of protecting people, building, renewing from the ground up. But also, like, Stacey, what kind of message could this send? There are 52,000 races happening on November 4th. And there's pretty much elections every Tuesday until then. Make us understand, from the people who are sort of just, oh, no, it's the midterms. Let's just focus on that.
Okay, so let's think about 2 things. The reason we focus so much on federal elections, especially in communities that are red, it's that often our salvation from oppression has come from the federal government because our states didn't see us as fully participatory. Women did not have what they needed. It took the federal government often to manifest our rights in the most real sense. So I understand the fascination. Plus, they spend billions of dollars making sure we remember it. But the reason the local elections matter, it's where we get the building blocks of our democracy. The capstone is the federal election, but the framework, the foundation, and the interior is all local elections. That is why we are so hungry for better leadership. It's because we need people who are growing from the ground up, but who also remember from the ground up what the problems are. Our children's education is not dictated by the Department of Education. We know this because half of it's gone, but our kids are still going to school. That's why school boards matter. They didn't ban books at the federal level. They banned books at the local level. Federal law doesn't guarantee our rights creation. They guarantee our rights protection. But what we have is often made manifest by local law. So I live in a state where, as a woman, I am not allowed reproductive choice. The federal government abdicated responsibility and left it to the state to determine the quality of my womanhood. I refuse to acknowledge that, but that's what they're trying to do. Our kids, our veterans, almost everything that we think of as federal has a local proxy. And so we have to recognize that what we do at the local level sends the signal to the federal level what they can actually do or what they need to do better. But when we give all of our attention to the federal side, it's like paying attention to your roof leaking while termites eat your floorboards. You might not have any rain coming in, but you're sinking through the ground. And so we've got to do the work of making sure the house is solid. Yes, we need to patch the roof, or in this case, completely replace it. But before we get there, we've got to make sure there's a structure for us to have. And that's why local elections matter. It's why when I was in the state legislature, I spent so much time focused on state and local work. Yes, I care about federal elections. But if we don't hold the house, no pun intended, we can't hold the house if we don't build the house we need. But this is the other thing. The people who we get to vote in those elections, if we have the same people show up that showed up last time, we're in trouble. This is the time to build the muscle memory of victory. When we win these elections, when we flip these seats, when we change these laws at the local level, no matter what they say at the federal level, we are getting the things we need right now. And they're going to have to work even harder to change it. So let's do what we can to seize power now. And I'm going to stop talking now because I've now mixed every metaphor I can think of. But I need us to hold in
there's
our
houses, there's other houses,
Exactly.
there's foundations.
But
I'm very clear that we need to build the strongest foundation possible.
There we go.
You were crystal clear. It is coming through clear. Okay. This relates to what you were saying too about all the people. We can't just have the same people who voted in the last election. That also, I think, is so relevant in these 2025 elections. One thing that's part of the really incredible opportunity here is that turnout is so frightfully low in these local elections. Some of these school board elections are about 5-10% turnout. But I think the challenge that all the Nicolettes have out there too is to get folks who are like, what, is there even an election this year? Like, what, to vote. And I think a lot of people, Stacey Abrams, would love to hear your version of what you say to the person who's like, it doesn't matter. I don't know. I don't have time for that.
So I ask, what help do you need? What's hurting you? What's bothering you? Most people don't know who's responsible for the pain. And so they don't vote because they don't know that it will change anything. Yeah. They don't vote for judges because they don't realize that it's not just who they send to jail. It's who gets out, who gets help versus who gets incarceration. You got to ask, what are you worried about? If you're worried about whether kids in your community have access to jobs, that's your mayor. That's your city council member. That's your county commission. If you're upset because you think no one's taking climate action, ask if your counties, what are your counties doing about water conservation? I don't ask people to vote. I ask them what they need. And then I connect it to the job that can make it so. But I also don't think it's going to make them change their minds about voting. That's when I turn annoying because I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, okay, are you registered to vote? Are you registered yet? Are you registered now? Then I do, okay, do you have a plan to vote? If they finally agree to do it, do you have a plan to vote? We tend to think that if we do it once and we get a great response, our work is done. If any of you have children, and most of you do, there's never been a time where you said something one time and it actually happened. If you've got a child, a spouse, a friend, repetition is all. Yeah. And that's how voting works. It is not just connecting the dots. It's then helping them get to the place. And so organizing is, yes, I need you to know what the pain is. I need you to know who can solve the pain. But I'm also going to help you take the action you want to take. I'm going to be your accountability partner. You and I both know you need to work out tomorrow morning. You're not going to do it just because you put out your clothes the night before. But if I call you and I bug you and you know that if you don't answer the phone, I'm not going to stop, you're going to at least wake up enough to curse me out. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we want.
Okay. That was maybe the best description I've ever heard. Actually, I'm serious right now, of relational organizing, right? Because you've got your friend's number. You know what time she said she was going to try to get to that gym class, and you know exactly what to say to get her going. And so can we talk about Red, Wine, and Blue is all about relational organizing. God bless all the tactics out there in terms of sending a text or a postcard or the phones and all these, but people are harder and harder and harder to reach these days because they don't want to talk to strangers. They're tired of their phones being blown up and everything else by people they don't know. And so we know to get through to folks, like, it's going to work best exactly like you just described. Can you just I've never heard you directly talk, I don't think, about relational organizing, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
It's exactly this. So I just saw a question in here about when the chat, someone said, well, how do we know what the jobs are? So part of relational organizing is understanding the questions you have are the questions someone else has. The answers you're getting are answers they need. And so relational organizing is simply acknowledging that we've got other stuff to do, that politics is not what consumes most people's lives. Relational organizing says, I actually understand the life you're living, and I'm going to help you make it better because I'm going to do some of the homework for you. I'm going to do some of the legwork for you, or I'm going to be there with you when you do it yourself. And just to bring it full circle, when you talked about introverts versus extroverts, I'm actually an introvert. I'm not shy, but I'm going to get off of this call and sit in silence by myself very happily for at least an hour. But the thing is, I know that I can find the answer to the question, what does this job do? So if I'm an introvert, I'm going to be the person in my relational organizing circle that comes up with a very pithy description of every single job that's going to be on the ballot. And I'm going to do that research because I don't want to talk to a single human. But because I've written this down, then my outgoing relational organizing friend now has something that she can hand off every single time someone asks. I put in a little card form. And because these are the local elections happening, I have, here's the job, here's what it does, and here's an example. Relational organizing is about meeting people where they are, not where you want them to be, and being with them as they make the journey, and you do take the journey with them. That's all it is. It sounds great. It's a fantastic phrase.
Yeah.
But all it means is that you meet people where they are because you've been there yourself.
And you're willing to do it. I mean, I think for some people, they feel like, again, like, I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to be that friend who brings this up. Honestly, I used to feel that way myself. And then once I got used to it, I got more comfortable. But part of getting comfortable was the positive feedback.
Yes.
People were, it's like, actually, they're like, thank you. Oh my gosh, like, this is so helpful, and I love being a helper,
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's what it is.
People want to feel smarter. They want to feel more empowered. They want to feel like they can control their lives. They're often afraid to tell you what they're afraid of. And part of relational organizing, part of elections, it's not just about making sure somebody gets a job. It's making sure that someone's willing to do the job of helping your community. Because for every second of irritation that they feel, their lives are made better when there's someone who's passing the right bill, who's making the right choice, who's rezoning so that affordable housing is actually possible. Those choices get made at the local level. There's not a federal law that's going to fix the affordable housing shortage. That's all local. And that's the other piece of this. People want to know how to be better. They need you to help them without judgment, but with commitment.
Yeah.
When we're willing to do that, we create our own superpowers across the board.
Yeah. Stacey, you have told us what renewal might look like. What is giving you hope right now that renewal may just be possible?
Again, I'm the daughter of Black people who were brought to this country enslaved, who then became sharecroppers. My parents were the first in both of their families to go to college. My mom's the first person in her family to finish high school. And in the generations, I became the first Black woman in American history to be the nominee for governor, and not just any state, but a deep South state.
Yeah.
I may not have gotten the job, but the work that I got to do, the people that were galvanized in 2018, I didn't get the prize. I lost by 54,000 plus votes, less than 2%. But in 2 more years, we were able to deliver a president and 2 US senators. And while we may not have gotten what we needed in 2024, they had to fight like hell to get what they wanted. We have to remember that this is not about what happens on a Tuesday. It's what happens in between those days. They have been trying to destroy democracy for generations because they don't like what it's become. And what it's become is foundationally a diverse nation that's for all people, a place that is filled with equity when we are willing to fight for it, a place that believes that inclusion means respect for all people. They hate DEI because they don't care about the letters. They hate the values. I am emboldened because those values are real, because our superpower as a nation is our diversity. It is our commitment to equity. It is our willingness to be inclusive and to guarantee that inclusion in our laws and in our behaviors. What gives me hope is that my existence is the product of a country that gets better every time we try. And I'm here today because you are leading a group of extraordinary people. I love Buffy the Vampire Slayer, one of my favorite shows. And in the last episode of Buffy, she realizes that while she's been told her whole life that she is the chosen one, she realizes that every single woman has the potential to be the chosen one. And instead of waiting for some man to say you've been chosen, she decides to ignite their power in that moment. Red Wine and Blue is turning every single woman on this call, every good man who's listening in, into the chosen ones right now. What gives me hope is that we all contain that potential. And if we use it, we will win.
There's no person I could ask for a send-off for us to take action and not just talk, not just chat tonight, but take action. Stacey, what are your words of encouragement before we go and do just that?
I'm going to go back to oldies but goodies. Go, fight, win. Red, Wine, and Blue is the way to do it. Let's get it done, guys. Let's go.
How to Not Lose Your Shit is a podcast from Red, Wine, and Blue. It's hosted by Katie Paris and LaFonda Cousin and produced by Amy Thorstensen. To learn more about Red, Wine, and Blue, you can find us on social media, on the Red, Wine, and Blue app, or on our website at redwine.blue.